Welcome back, everyone. I am so excited to be speaking today with my guest, Dr. Wednesday Martin, who is a professional loudmouth.
Oh, I like it.
Yeah.
I'm going to embrace that.
Anthropologist, social scientist, the author of many books, including Untrue, The Primates of Park Avenue, Button, and you're working on a new one that we're going
Step
to talk
Monster
about.
is another one.
Step
The
Monster.
Button
that's
is a
right.
natural history of the clitoris, and I'm working on a new book called Free Agent.
Yes. Oh my God. Wednesday is a dear friend and one of my favorite people in the world to talk about sex with because she's got a lot of opinions that are backed up by so much great science. So let's get started. It's time to get naked with Dr. Kate. I'm your host, Dr. Kate Balestrieri, a Beverly Hills-based psychologist, certified sex therapist, and the founder of Modern Intimacy, a national therapy group. So let's dive into all things sex, relationships, mental health, and answer your questions with practical solutions and real answers. Each week, I'll share insights to help you build a healthy relationship with yourself, with other people, and with your sexuality. It's time to start thriving authentically. So let's get naked. And if you like this podcast, hit the download button so you never miss an episode. And don't forget to leave 5 stars and a review.
I'm so happy to be sitting here with a girlfriend to do a podcast. This is heaven to me.
It is so fun. And, funny you should say that. You made a post the other day on social media that was talking about how women are prioritizing their platonic friendships with other women higher than their romantic or sexual relationships. Where did you get that information?
Yeah, this is a really interesting, fun statistic and social shift. So just a little background is that as an anthropologist, I'm always sort of looking at big picture social behaviors and sexual behaviors and big shifts. So, a psychologist looks at a group level sometimes when they're doing some social psychology, but anthropologists really look at cultures. So, yes, I did know this shift in the culture. And I think the reason it occurred to me was I was enjoying my time with my girlfriends so much. And so many of the women in my cohort, women I know, women around my age, I'm in my 50s, were talking about why have I built my life around this campfire that's, say, my husband or my long-term romantic partner and my kids. Why aren't my girlfriends at the campfire with me? Why is this? And then because this can feel socially isolating if you have a husband who's been socialized, as almost all men have, to be a not top-notch communicator. If your children, if you have them, fledge, right? And suddenly your priorities are shifting. And I was hearing this from my girlfriends, and a lot of times when you are witnessing a trend and you're inside of it, you might say, this is a trend and the data do not bear it out. But in this case, the data do bear out that women are shifting. Now, I thought that this was women in midlife. And I thought, as I said, it was because if they had kids, they had fledged. If they were heterosexual, they might be looking, now that the kids weren't there, taking their energy a lot. They might be looking for meaningful interactions that they couldn't necessarily get at home. And I had all these stories about that. And those are, in fact, things that happen to women in midlife, which is a fascinating developmental stage. But back to the specific focus on friendship, I did see, studies. First, I thought of this great book that I believe came out in 2008 called The Girls from Ames. And in it, a social psychologist, a man, decided that it was very interesting and worthy of scientific exploration to look into the friendships of this cohort of a dozen or more women from Ames, Iowa, and they had sort of lifelong friendships. And he looked at how those friendships unfurled over time, and he realized that these were primary relationships. These weren't secondary or tertiary relationships. These relationships were central to their sense of well-being. And they were central to their identity. And then he went on further and he looked at the health benefits that these friendships conferred. And when I say health benefits of female friendship, I'm talking about mental health, but I'm also talking about physical health and, yes, even sexual health.
Mm.
So he was a great scholar. Unfortunately, we lost him in a car accident. But this was a pivotal moment for me in studying women and women's friendships when a man, a credentialed man, a well-respected social scientist decided that women's friendships were worthy of exploration, period. That was really important.
It is.
And since that studied the girls from Ames, there has been a bit more of a focus in the social science on female friendship. So I was just fascinated by my own friendships. To make a long story short, that weekend that you and I had at my friend Jennifer's house where we were hanging out, we were by the pool, in the hot tub, like spilling tea, having fun with two of my other girlfriends. I feel that those are foundational experiences for me, whereas before I used to feel I only have the bandwidth for my two kids and my husband. And those are wonderful, fulfilling relationships. But we know that when women are in a nuclear family and taking care of little kids, they tend to be very socially isolated, whether their partner is another woman or a man. And we know it's especially isolating if their partner is a man because men are not socialized to communicate the way we are. So the further I dug into the literature, the more interesting it got. I think in that post that you're talking about, what I was noting was a study by a group of women in midlife, a group that's there to sort of empower and connect women in midlife. And what they found was that women 18 plus, it wasn't just women in midlife, 81% of these women 18 plus were saying, oh, I don't prioritize any relationships above my female friendships. They're right here on par with my relationship with my life partner and my kids.
Love that.
81%.
Wow.
Okay, I thought this was just women in midlife, but it's women 18 plus in this study.
That's a big shift.
It's a big shift, and I love that it's like older women are teaching younger women this, but younger women teach me this every day when I see the depth of some of their friendships, whether that's on social media or they're my coaching clients or they're my friends' daughters. I see this. So then I looked up another study that was done at UCLA. Both of these studies, I believe, are from 2023. And the UCLA study was so wonderful because the people who authored the study asked adolescents, what do you really want to see in movies? And they said, friends. I want to see more depictions of friends. So the youngs are teaching us, hey, we're learning from you, but we're also in our own lived experience. We're prioritizing friendships. And they're asking the question, why aren't we seeing this in movies? Why am I not seeing this in scripted series? That's what these adolescents are saying. These adolescents are saying, show me fewer depictions of me in a important search for the one, the perfect, ideal, one romantic partner that I will have for a lifetime. And show me more of these joyful, affirming, and sometimes really complicated relationships with friends.
Well, I think it really speaks to a lot of our evolving understanding of patriarchy and the influences that patriarchy has had on how we view relationships and how we prioritize them. Because what you're describing is very much the reality for pre-patriarchal living. We were far more communal, and our relationships were more connected in this sort of platonic and mutually supportive way. And romantic or sexual partners were a part of that, but they weren't the predominant anchoring relationship in our lives. And we were healthier for it.
We were healthier for it. And, I want to make a point about this. This is so interesting. So in my field, which is anthropology and what used to be called evolutionary biology, but we now call it human behavioral ecology. Okay, call it what you want. Just think of it as anthropology and with some evolutionary theory in there. So the received wisdom for many, many years was that society was formed by these sort of rangy, pragmatic coalitions that men built. That men, here was the thinking, men built these coalitions and relationships while hunting. Men built these coalitions and relationships through political alliances and governance, excuse me. And men built these relationships, these social relationships and society ultimately through like perimeter defense, hunting, things like this. Okay, so that was the story for a long time. And then anthropologists like Sarah Blaffer-Hrdy, my friend and colleague Brooke Skelza, my friend and colleague Dr. Amy Parrish, started saying, well, if that's the case, how do we account for female friendship and cooperation? And so this whole trend started in anthropology and evolutionary biology of looking at cooperation and conflict between female mammals, between female non-human primates, and between human women. And what they learned is that female friendship and female alliances are at least as important in forming contemporary society as we know it now as male ones, and that we've probably overemphasized and sort of fetishized these fantasies about how society came into being, and that women played a much larger role. For example, we now know that women hunted.
Right.
We can no longer just say men hunted and women gathered. That's just one example of how the social science is shifting. But so it was interesting also to dig into a little bit how female friendship came about. We used to think, well, in patriarchal settings, women can't really be friends. They would reach out to kin. And what are the benefits? And so people said, well, let's see. The benefit would be in building a community to help you rear a child. It would be in figuring out where food resources are, right? Talking to your girlfriend, where's the food? Oh, it's over here. Sharing the food, sharing the child care, which is called alloparenting. And also social support within a patriarchy. So now women anthropologists and men too, and non-gender conforming anthropologists have been now saying for a couple decades, hey, this whole fantasy that male alliances brought our society into being, that's a fantasy.
It is a fantasy.
It is a fantasy.
There is such an undermining of the contribution that women and non-men have made to human advancements over the course of however.
Amen. That's the great big picture.
It is. It is. Yeah. So, and when you have only men leading the charge in that research, of course, there are going to be biases from their position.
That's right.
Their social location. So it's so important to have other voices and other people's lived experiences saying, hey, wait a minute, actually, we haven't considered this, this, or this, so let's do that.
Yes.
And see how it rounds out the whole picture.
Yeah. So people like Dr. Skelza, Dr. Parrish, Dr. Blaffer-Hrdy have really shifted the thinking within my discipline, but I think they've also just really helped contribute to our understanding of the importance and the foundational nature and the centrality of women's friendship to everything from the bases of our society to our sexual health. Female friendship impacts all of that. So
let's talk about how female friendship specifically helps women have better sex. How does it help their sexual health?
Let's do it. I wanted to say one thing, which is we find I look at the anthropological data, but I also look at social psychology and psychology. And in health psychology and social psychology, what we have seen is that in female friendship, there tends to be more self-disclosure, and there tends to be more turning to each other for support in moments of crises. Now, how does that contribute to overall well-being?
I mean, so many ways.
Yeah.
Right? It helps people feel not alone. It normalizes behavior.
Yes.
It lends a helping hand when somebody's in need. I mean, these are all imperative ways that sound relationships help us stay okay.
Yeah. And there are so many levels to this. I thought about how some therapists advise women, how about you focus on your friendships and sort of support yourself that way,
Mhm.
scaffold yourself
Mhm.
with your friendships and prioritize those so that you're making better decisions about your romantic and sexual partners
Yes.
because you're so fulfilled, right? You're over here, you have, let's call this your relational needs,
Mhm.
right? If you fill your relational needs and satisfaction, this circle, so that there's only a little slice left. It's almost all filled with friendship, time with friends, prioritizing your friends, talking to your friends, laughing with your friends, crying with your friends, arguing with your friends, right? And then there's this smaller slice left. Another person can't be the one
Mm.
because there are already the many. What does that mean? That means we're taking pressure and expectation in a lot of ways off this romantic relationship.
Yep.
And we're distributing the pressure, if you will, and the joy
Mhm.
and the risk among many people, including those who are tried and true,
Mhm.
our girlfriends.
And what it really allows us to do is be far more discerning about romantic partners. This is
Yes.
something I say to a lot of the people that I work with of all genders.
Mm,
Like when you are putting so much emphasis on finding your person, your soulmate, or the one, whatever that means to you, you're really creating a relationship with romance that is coming from desperation and
yes.
from a
And
place,
need
yes,
and
and
loneliness.
scarcity. Yes.
Scarcity, loneliness,
Yes.
need,
Right.
desperation.
And that makes you less discerning. So you're
Yes,
more
you're like,
willing to
oh, this
tolerate.
person will do.
Yeah.
No, that person won't do. Why would you go out? I say to my coaching clients sometimes, okay, let's bracket the whole entire world. Let's bracket the whole weird world: Western, educated, industrialized,
Mhm.
rich, and democratic. Weird, right? Jared Diamond, the anthropologist, calls those weird societies. And let's bracket that we live in a weird society.
Mhm.
Aside from all that, what is the reason that you would go out and give your precious Saturday night to an unknown quantity
Mhm.
from a gender that has been aggressively socialized away from communication skills and relational skills? Why would you take that risk when you have the possibility of tried and true, time tested,
Mhm.
devoted sure bets?
Mm.
And you are less likely to do it and be disappointed if you were scaffolded by those friendships and if you prioritize them. So women have not really been given the cultural space to prioritize their
Mhm.
girlfriends.
Mhm. But they're taking it
And they're
now.
taking it
Yeah.
now.
Mhm.
So I think the data suggest what to me is a very significant shift in our relational health,
Mhm.
that we're realizing that you can get it from your girlfriends. Now, does that mean that it contributes to your sexual health because you're going to sleep with them? Maybe. Have
Maybe.
sex with them? Maybe. But does it also mean that, as you said, you're coming from a place of confidence, of feeling that you don't have so much a need as a
Mhm.
desire to
Mhm.
connect with the person sexually because you're getting all your relational stuff going? I like to help people understand that through the lens of anthropology, we're a pro social species.
Right.
We evolved to affiliate,
Mhm.
right? With our kin, but also with our non kin, our, chosen kin.
Mm.
And that's the beauty of being human. So now I see women being more creative than ever
Mhm.
in how they, exercise that pro-social deep groove within
Mhm.
ourselves to include other women
Mhm.
more than before.
I think it's even more necessary than ever before, given the tensions around gender and power that continue to thrive and become even more polarized in 2024. When women are faced with a judicial system that is looking to strip away their reproductive rights,
Mm.
that friendship becomes even more important in not feeling isolated and alone and terrified of how to proceed with life, how to proceed with things like pregnancy when there are so many risks.
That's right.
I think it just really gives women a lot more safety
Hmm.
socially,
Yes.
financially, sexually, from a physical health perspective,
Yeah.
to really prioritize their female friendships for all the reasons that you mentioned. And I love love that I'm seeing younger women in their teens and their 20s and their 30s on social media
Mhm.
running with the language of decentering men. And I know
Yes.
a lot of men hear that and they get really, nervous and upset and they feel attacked when they hear it. But I'll encourage any men listening to just remember this isn't a personal attack against you. It's a recentering of women and non-binary folks as being agentic humans who can prioritize their own decisions, their own wants, their own needs, and that makes them better partners to you and to other people, right?
Yeah, and I mean, I hesitate to frame female friendship as a thing that benefits men, but I love this way that, to invite everybody to understand
Yeah.
the benefits of friendship because men have really suffered
Mhm.
as well
Mhm.
from being discouraged to form tight alliances with other men, to
Close emotional
be
alliances.
emotional, to be
Yeah.
vulnerable, to practice self disclosure. They
Mhm.
tend to do that with women in their lives, whether it's their
Mhm.
mother, their sister, their girlfriend, their platonic female friend.
Mm.
So that's a really important point that you're making. And, in terms of young women turning to each other, I just want to mention again the work of my colleague and friend, Dr. Amy Parrish, and bonobos.
Let's talk about it.
Let's talk about bonobos.
Let's do it.
Okay, so a lot of people know that bonobos are these non-human primates. They look like chimps, except
Mhm.
they're kind of taller and skinnier. And one of the things that we know about bonobos is that they resolve conflict through sex rather than through aggression.
Hmm.
So, if we wanted to be really kind of unsubtle about it, we would say that in our study of human beings through the lens of evolution, we have really focused on the chimp narrative. And what are chimps? Chimps are they have a male dominated social formation. Females are subjected to violence
Mm.
from males to all forms of coercion, including infanticide. Males
Mm.
practice infanticide. And if a female tries to sort of step out and have sex with novel males, which non human female primates love sexual novelty, she could even be killed. It's
Wow.
pretty dangerous to be a low ranking female chimp.
Mm.
And Dr. Amy Parrish was studying bonobos in most. So that's the story about human evolution that
Mhm.
we've embraced, the
Mhm.
chimp story. They're relatively closely related to us, and their social structures are characterized by basically, male chimp privilege. They are basically very
Mhm.
hierarchical, and dominant male chimps are at
Mhm.
the top, and female chimps are further toward the bottom. And as I said, they're
Mm.
subjected to violence and coercion and even infanticide.
Mhm.
All right. Dr. Amy Parrish was studying chimps a few decades ago, and she was studying bonobos. And a lot of people presumed, again, that bonobos were just like chimps. They were only in what was at that time called Zaire, Democratic Republic of Congo. There was a lot of political conflict there, as now. Primatologists were not going there to study them.
Mm.
People who lived there had more glimpses of them and more of an understanding, and primatologists really benefited from that. But when Dr. Parrish started studying them at the San Diego Zoo, what she noticed as she started putting things together, and they lived in these vast enclosures
Mm.
that really very well replicated their natural habitat. So their social behavior was pretty much unchanged under human care. And what she noticed was that the females were always eating first.
Oh,
And she noticed that the females were getting groomed all the time, and the males really didn't get groomed that much.
interesting.
She said, "Hold on a second. That means that I'm studying a female dominant species."
Mhm.
And she started looking at the facts on the ground. Well, like in chimps, there's this incredible sexual dimorphism.
Mm.
Chimp males are quite a bit larger than female chimps,
Mhm.
and male bonobos are quite larger than female bonobos. And yet, while chimps, you see many incidences of male on female chimp violence.
Mhm.
Among bonobos, when Dr. Parrish looked at the veterinary records, she saw that almost 90% of serious injuries were inflicted on males by females, even though females are smaller.
Wow.
she started to say to herself, I think I'm seeing a female dominant species.
Mhm.
Let me look into this further because it's very hard when you have an insight and it flips
Mhm.
narratives of what maleness is and what femaleness is
Mhm.
on its head.
Mhm.
She said, wait a second, if we're very closely related to chimps and bonobos, and some people think that we're more closely related to bonobos based on some muscle studies,
Hmm.
that means that a big part of the story of human evolution is female dominance.
Mhm.
Let me dig into this further, which she proceeded to do. And she said, this isn't making sense to me because female bonobos disperse from their natal group. They leave their family group and they go into these other groups.
Mm.
And so they're smaller and they don't have the benefit of kin all around them. How are they more powerful? How are they inflicting injuries on males? How are they getting fed, eating first? How are they getting groomed all the time? How is this happening?
What's the magic?
What's the magic? The magic, female friendship.
Interesting.
Female coalitions. Now,
Ah.
among bonobos, what happens is a new female comes into the group, and bonobos are a species, again, that resolves conflict not through aggression, but through sexual interactions.
Mhm.
So the way this happens is, I wish we could stand up so I could act this out with you, but a bonobo will put an arm around another bonobo like, hey,
Can I come
hi,
over there?
would you like to do this?
Uh-huh.
Now, it's not uncommon for a female bonobo to get solicited by more than one bonobo at a time.
Hmm.
And often it's a female bonobo and a male bonobo. Okay, so the male's over here, the female's over here. The way a female bonobo shows who she wants to consort with, right, is she turns in that direction. And Dr. Parrish and other primatologists noticed that she was much more likely to turn to the female bonobo
Hmm.
to consort.
Hmm.
Why? Because it felt better. Female bonobos have these richly innervated, forward-facing,
Mhm.
relatively exposed clitorides.
Hmm.
That's the
Is that the
plural
plural for clitoris?
for primatologists.
Oh, for primatologists.
Uh-huh.
Oh.
So when the female's copulating with a male, that might feel really good.
Mm-hmm.
But when a female is consorting with another female and they're rubbing those forward-facing, exposed, quite large clitorides together,
Mm-hmm.
it feels fantastic, and you will often hear female bonobos just shrieking with pleasure when they're with each other. So because it feels better, she turns to the female bonobo. And then what happens? Through those sexual bonds, these female bonobos build social bonds. They don't have any kin around, but they have a strong bond with this girlfriend
Mm-hmm.
built through sex, but then that builds a strong relationship between them, and then they build these coalitions. So now it's never one male bonobo against one female bonobo because he would kick her ass based on strength.
Mm-hmm.
It is a coalition of 5 female bonobos, 6, 8,
Wow.
and 1 male. This is
Interesting.
why you never see, I'm not going to say never. This is why you rarely see a male bonobo aggress against a female. And when he does, wow, does he learn quickly that he messed with the matriarchy.
Oh, wow.
Male bonobos inherit their rank from females. This is the power of female friendship in our evolutionary history, in our legacy, not precisely in our exact lineage, but, along the lines. We're more closely related to bonobos and chimps than to other mammals. And so this is a really important strand in thinking through the origins of ourselves as a species, is that we had this great and wonderful propensity, our ancestresses did, for building coalitions with other females for safety, for help with child rearing, for finding resources. And so we have a deep groove for female friendship within us. It doesn't mean that we don't have a groove for conflict as well, but we do have a very deep evolutionary groove for female friendship.
Wow. That is so interesting. I had no idea that there was such a contrast between bonobos
And
and
chimps.
chimps,
Yes.
even though they're relatively similar in terms of their size differences. So what stops bonobo males from getting together and joining a group and bringing conflict to the consortium of females?
Fear. The females were just forming these coalitions through sex because don't forget, now male bonobos will have sex with each other. They'll copulate with each other. They'll perform oral sex on each other. To be clear, bonobos are like whatever, the wildest porn, right? Like they are very uninhibited and they build social connections through sex. But it just happens that this clitoris to clitoris thing feels so amazing, right? That the females seek it out and just these social bonds happen through that. So it's not like they have an end game beyond pleasure, but it ends up being really smart and they create a matriarchy through it. And my friend Amy Parrish often says, imagine if we were more like bonobos. What would it mean? It would mean hooking up in public with women around watching so that males couldn't commit violence.
Wow.
Just a thought, you guys.
Where can I sign that petition?
Let's start circulating it right now. Put it in the show notes.
So you wrote an article. Let's switch gears a little bit.
Sure.
You wrote an article for Psychology Today a little while ago about age hypogamy, which is now my new favorite term. And
age hypogamy, tell them what it means.
Oh, it's so fun. Age hypogamy is a term that references older women and younger men dating.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So we often hear on social media about hypergamy.
Oh, because the podcast bros are obsessed.
They are. As if someone wouldn't want the best possible match for them. But anyway,
right.
I think this term, hypogamy, is interesting.
Yes.
And age hypogamy specifically. So can you break down what it is? And let's talk about it, because older women dating younger men has always been a thing.
Yeah.
But it's definitely becoming far more accepted and far more practiced.
Yes.
And it's just, I think in your article you called 2023 a renaissance for 50-plus women.
Yes.
Right?
It wasn't me. I was quoting somebody else who called 2023 the year of the 50-plus woman. Okay. So just to summarize what we were talking about before, basically female friendship is the basis of our society, as I see it, of our species. And it has incredible healing powers. And it has an incredible ability to empower women. I just wanted to summarize that a little bit. And it's part of our evolutionary lineage.
Cheers to that.
Oh my gosh, cheers.
Cheers.
Let's drink our tall boys.
Our tall boy waters.
These are tall girls. Okay, so on to age hypogamy.
Okay.
I have a colleague and a girlfriend named Dr. Trina Orchard. And we built a coalition, a 2-woman coalition, to study something that fascinated us called age hypogamy, when older women date younger men. Now, this used to be so taboo in our culture that there was a movie about it.
Mrs. Robinson.
The Graduate. And we called these women Mrs. Robinson because they were so one-off and rare and weird. But when Trina and I dug into the data, what we saw was that, depending on the study you looked at, somewhere between 30% or 50%, and in some groupings, 70% of women, depending on the study you looked at, were saying that they were open to dating a man 10 years or younger. Then there was also a burgeoning interest among younger men of dating older women. So what Dr. Orchard and I did is it was a relatively small sample. And if you want to look at the original study, you can Google Trina Orchard, Wednesday Martin, age hypogamy, and it'll take you to the original study as well as the piece we published on Psychology Today. But we wanted to dig into the whys. We saw the data, we saw the social shift. I would call age hypogamy, in addition to the shift toward focusing on female friendship, which I've tried to make the argument about why evolutionarily that shift makes so much sense and is so good for women. And the second point being, I think another huge social and sexual shift going on right now in our culture is age hypogamy. So we wanted to get into, okay, we have these data about the fact that younger men are into it in I'm not going to say necessarily unprecedented numbers, but they're being unprecedentedly open about it. It's almost like being with an older woman is an item on many young men's bucket list now.
Yes. I don't think that's new, but I think they're
It's not
talking
new,
about it
but
more.
being open about it,
Yeah.
yeah. And sometimes well, let me not get ahead of myself. So we said, we see the stats that it's happening. We see that people are open to it. Why? So we asked younger men who dated older women, and we asked older women who dated younger men what they liked about it. Would you like me to go through and tell you why?
I would love to hear it.
Okay. One of the things that younger men consistently reported was basically that older women were awesome to them. They were awe-inspiring. And here are some of the ways it broke down. They liked older women's competence. Now I'm talking about interpersonal competence and confidence, financial competence, and it's slightly different, social competence. So young men would say things like, I really love being part of her world. And one young man said, she goes to art openings and she knows the artists. Another young man said, she's so confident. She knows what she wants in bed. She's not just sitting there waiting for me. She's telling me and showing me. Another young man said about being with older women, I like that she had children already and she doesn't need to pressure me about that. So there were pragmatic considerations and there were this welcome me into your world considerations. And they found the world of older women to be aspirational.
Wow.
So there wasn't this thing that we thought might be going on of like older women weren't cool. It was like, no, she's cool. Like I aspire, it's everything from liking the car she drives, but it's also this deeper thing.
They're worldly. Older women are a lot more worldly to younger men.
And then there was the pragmatic consideration that I threw in there at the wrong time. But the pragmatic considerations such as I don't feel pressured to make decisions about having children. I don't feel pressured necessarily into marriage because maybe this is age inappropriate. So neither of us is thinking of that. Or maybe just because, young men just want to be in a relationship that not only is the woman cool and her world is aspirational, but she's more likely to be like, yeah, been there, done that, right? So then the other thing that came up a lot was, as I said, the sexual experience part, the competence and the confidence. And then this other thing, which is they just thought that being with an older woman might be sort of part of their sentimental education that was kind of on their bucket list. Like they got that it would be a cool experience and that it is a desirable experience and that it would enhance them sexually, socially, and personally to be with an older woman.
Amazing.
Okay.
Now what do the women like?
Okay, so here we're like, yeah, they're going to probably tell us, oh, I like feeling seen. They're going to probably tell us, oh, we had our ideas. The most common response we got was, and forgive me, I will just quote what one of the women said, they can keep up with me sexually and their dicks aren't broken.
Ooh, all right.
Okay, so women were being very sexually pragmatic and maybe, quote, selfish, unquote, about these relationships with younger men when we drilled into their subjective experiences. And one of them was that they liked the sexual vigor and energy of younger men, apart from feeling like a boss because a young, hot guy was attracted to them. No. There was this really positively, I will say, selfish piece of it is so nice to be with somebody who can go all night long. I wasn't necessarily expecting that. I've been studying female sexuality for a long time. But that was a finding that we said, wow, this is wonderful because we love it when social scientists love it, especially if we study sexuality and gender. We often love it when we have a surprising or counterintuitive finding.
Well, I think it really speaks to like just how readily we as a culture desexualize older women.
Wow, what a mistake. I'm writing a whole book about never underestimate the sexual interest and adventurousness of a woman in her 50s and 60s and beyond. Never underestimate that. But okay, do you want to talk about the rest of the reasons women
Let's
liked
come back
it?
to your book.
Okay, this book is called Free Agent.
We'll come back to it.
We'll come back to it, but this age hypogamy thing is part of Free Agent.
Okay.
So the women said, I like being with somebody who can go all night long. Now, what were the sort of subcategories of that? Well, women said things like, yeah, I like being with a guy. He matches my sexual energy. He doesn't need to pop a Viagra. It's not just one
One and done.
one and done. So I'm liking that. I guess that was women who are really into penetrative sex. God bless their souls and hearts. But they also said things like they're more sexually adventurous. It wasn't just that they could go longer and more times. It was that they found these young men to be more sexually open than men in their age cohort. So there was that aspect. Then there was the aspect of these women saying, I just feel like a boss when I go out with this hot young man. Now, talk about usurping a traditionally male privilege, right? How many times do you go out and you see a woman and you're like, with a man and you're like, is it his daughter or his girlfriend? I don't know. It could go either way.
Well, this is Los Angeles, so that's like every other couple.
Yes. And so less often, I think, do we see that with the genders reversed. But it is happening among older women who date younger men. They are reporting that it feels cool. They feel cool. They like being seen with these younger men. Then they like what's happening behind closed doors with these younger men. And then there's this place where younger men and older women are often wanting the same things. I don't know if you're familiar with this term called new masculinities. In which young men sort of eschew traditional markers of adulthood. So, traditionally they've been told, well, to be a grown-up, you have a car and a house, and then you get married and you have kids. And these newer masculinities are based on friendships, caring, and then things like psychedelic journeys, art, like I said, connection, experiences, travel. Women in their 50s and beyond are at a life stage where they've been there, done that with traditional markers of, quote, success, unquote, and heteronormative ideas of what they should achieve. They're done with that. They did it, and younger men are in the same position where they're also eschewing these more traditional ideas about how it should be.
Right. The women have either done it or they're beyond an age where it's expected of them to do it. And I think that is...
Or they're at an age where they're fed up.
Yeah. It's all
and they
very
have
liberating.
The friendships and they have the social support to say, and the money, the resources. Your 50s are a great time. I mean, we'll talk about it and talk more explicitly about free agent. So these are the subjective pleasures of age hypogamy that younger men and older women are describing. And, it's worth saying it's called age hypogamy, and that only describes older women, younger man dyads. But I'm really interested to study older women with younger women as well. That's a really interesting formation for me to study, interesting sexual and social strategy. And I'm not aware of the research on older men, younger men pairings among gay men, but as you suggest, in Los Angeles, that's also something that we see a lot. We see a lot of older, younger, and heterosexual women are getting in on that too. And we tend to find that when they are rich in resources like kin support, friendship support, and finances, women do whatever they want. And a lot of those things look like the things that men have the privilege to do. And age hypogamy is one of them. So this is a big shift in the culture that Dr. Orchard and I noticed and wanted to write about.
Amazing. Well, let's talk about your book, Free Agent. You've been working on it for a while.
Oh my God, it feels like an eternity.
Yeah.
And
what's it about?
It's so interesting. I decided that women in their 50s had such unique and specific experiences socially, romantically, relationally, economically, professionally, that it wouldn't do to just call us younger boomers or older Gen X. We needed our own moniker that captured the specificity of female experience in your 50s. And what am I talking about exactly? Well,
in your 50s right now in this day and age.
And right now in this age.
Not an evergreen 50s.
Right. This is not evergreen. Okay. This is we're talking about now.
Okay.
What are some of the things going on in the industrialized West for women in their 50s? And what happens when you get social scientists who are their own cohort? They're probably not as likely to come from a presumption. So here's what happened. I was 53 or 54, and I had been married for the better part of 2 decades.
Mm-hmm.
I had 2 kids, and I had been living on the outside. It looked like a conventional life. I lived with my husband in Manhattan, uptown. We had raised kids together. We were monogamous. He worked more of a, I won't say a 9-to-5 job, but he had a job in finance. I was more arty. It was just all seemed very heteronormative and established.
Okay.
And what you would expect. And here I was in my 50s, and I suddenly realized, wait, my 50s are not what anybody told me to expect and not what I expected, because very soon into my 50s, my husband and I started talking about having an open marriage. And then I moved to Los Angeles for professional reasons. My whole life I had wanted to live somewhere warm and sunny. New York City was not doing it for me. And after 35 or so years in New York City, I said, I need to be in LA. I have work there, but also I just want to. I just feel like it. So I moved across the country. My husband and kids, who, were at the time one very young adult and one older adolescent, I just moved. And I knew that from the outside that might look villainous. But I couldn't just live with my husband and my kids anymore for the sake of appearances, for the sake of the social contract, for the sake of my children. I needed to do something for myself. So that is the start of Free Agent.
Wow.
And what I realized when I dug into the data is that I'm not unusual at all, and that women in their 50s are the generation or the group of women most likely to divorce, most likely to ask for a change in their relationship structure, most likely to ask for a living apart together relationship, which I'm in and really love, are most likely to start their own business. With these decisions that seem like personal decisions, these women are actually radically altering the fabric of our society. It's just that we haven't acknowledged it yet because it's so far outside what we think women in their 50s are. So Free Agent is an exploration of who women in their 50s really are, what they're really up to, and how they can inspire women and men of all ages.
Well, I want to read it. I mean, this is like just a few years away from me, and it feels so important to have a different template, a different story than the stories that a lot of women in their 30s and 40s understand about their relatives, their friends in their 50s, and sort of society as a whole tells us women in their 50s should expect. I think it sounds really empowering.
There are so many shoulds. And as one woman told me, my 50s were a time when I developed an allergy to the word should.
I'm so happy for her.
Yeah, they're women in their 50s. They're a force to be reckoned with. They're doing all kinds of things you wouldn't expect. They're dating younger. They're starting businesses. They're really getting into their sex lives now that if they're straight, they don't have to worry about pregnancy, or if they're lesbians or queer, they have years of accumulated confidence. Women in their 50s are not who you have been told we are.
It's sleepers.
It is a really exciting and revolutionary life stage. So I'm delighted to be writing and researching about women in that cohort.
Where can people find your book?
Well, actually nowhere right now.
What?
Because it's very hard for me to find a publisher for Free Agent. And if I could just say, I got some comments like, we've seen a lot of this.
What? I haven't seen anything
like
that.
What? What are you talking about? I think what they meant was that there was one memoir by a woman named Molly Winter, a fantastic memoir about open marriage, which is just part of Free Agent. And I noted how quickly women in our 50s went from being invisible to being too visible in the publishing world. Is some of the feedback that I was getting, like, oh, right, well, nobody cares about you guys. And then like, oh, we've heard enough from you.
Interesting.
So yeah, it's been very informative. When I was younger, I would not have had the resilience to deal with this.
I believe it.
I would have crumbled. Now I'm just saying to myself, okay, how am I going to do this? How am I going to be a female bonobo? How am I going to be a typical human woman and build a coalition or partnership with other women, with other people to make this book happen? At this point in my life, I no longer need permission. Women in their 50s will tell you all the time, my God, all that time I wasted waiting for permission. It's time to just do the thing.
Just do
So
it.
I'm looking forward to partnering with other women and maybe even some women who are listening right now to get Free Agent out in the world and to just do the thing without asking for permission, without waiting for permission.
Okay, so I know there's some literary agents, some publishers who might be listening if you're feeling it.
I have a great literary agent, but if any publishers want to get in touch, that's great.
Amazing.
Or if women want to get in touch with suggestions. One of my followers said something so great. She said, now is Free Agent going to be a book or a community or a movement?
Why not all of the things?
Oh my gosh. Thank you to my female follower for that great suggestion.
Yeah.
You just don't know what happens when you put into the world, I have this project. I'm so in love with it. I think you would be too. Do you have ideas about helping me get it out into the world?
So where can people learn more about you and work with you?
Well, I love Instagram. So wait, is it love or is it love-hate?
I think it's love-hate.
Yeah, I live on Instagram
Yes.
professionally. So find me there at Wednesday Martin, Ph.D. I don't really go on a lot of other social media platforms, although you've told me many times that I need to get on TikTok. So if you want to hear what I have to say about sexuality and relationships, find me there. I'm also available for coaching. You can DM me on Instagram.
Amazing.
I love
Thank
coaching.
you so much, Wednesday.
Oh my
This
gosh,
was
thank you so
wonderful.
much, Kate. It's so good to sit down and be cooperative and affiliative and pro-social with one of my favorite female non-human primates.
Mwah. Thank
Love
you so
you.
much for being
Thank
here.
you.
Love you too.
You're the
All right,
best.
everyone. Thanks for listening. I'll see you next week.
Thank you for listening to Get Naked with Dr. Kate. You can follow me on Instagram and TikTok at Dr. Kate Balestrieri and on YouTube at Modern Intimacy. If you have questions you want answered on the podcast, feel free to email me at question@getnakedpodcast.com. Our Modern Intimacy team is here to help you and to provide you with support. Feel free to schedule a free 30-minute consultation at the link in our show notes. And don't forget to join our newsletter for insights, surveys, and articles sent directly to your inbox. You can sign up at modernintimacy.com/newsletter. New episodes drop every Tuesday. I'll see you next week. Disclaimer, this podcast is not a substitute for therapy and does not constitute a professional relationship with me, Dr. Kate, or with Modern Intimacy. This podcast is for education and entertainment purposes only.